I don't get it.
It's about like making fun of Maryland and Ohio, like just Maryland and Ohio.
Oh, my parents met in Ohio.
My parents are both from Ohio. Where in Ohio?
Yeah, I think we should start.
To be continued.
Yeah. Let me finish this. There's people on the waiting list, and then
remember Alawi is Patrick.
I just let Alawi in. So.
Okay.
Yep, but he was Alawi this time.
That's cool.
Fancy, mixing it up.
All right. So I sent the student concern form in the Ledge channel. All of them wanted to be read. One of them was not submitted by an undergraduate student, so that one will have to be skipped. So I put that in red. All right, so Kisla, do you mind, or sorry, Protem, do you mind unmuting people as we go?
Okay, go ahead.
Great, thank you. So the first one, off-campus outlying and residential. So I think that's Alawi.
His name is... He's already unmuted.
I can read it.
All right, if you're willing.
Okay.
Yep, thank you then.
Yeah. I just want to thank the SGA for taking the time to support students' mental health on campus. As a student who is deeply invested in the discussion on BDS and a student who is also dealing with concerns regarding the spread of COVID, I truly appreciate the legislators taking the time to advocate to the speaker on our behalf. I look forward to having a debate that allows for students to adequately express their points of view on this contentious issue in a polite and deserving manner.
Next one is for the speaker. At last week's GBM, many students spoke about the stress and tumultuous nature of the COVID-19 pandemic we are living in, arguing that SGA should not hear a divestment resolution because it is not in the mental health interest of students. But what about the mental health of Palestinian students who face daily anxiety and sorrow, knowing that their family members will not receive adequate and humane medical attention, if any, during this global crisis? It is wrong to prioritize the mental health of some students over others, as we are all going through an incredibly challenging time right now. The Palestinian people face systematic oppression, such as inhumane living conditions in Gaza and restrictions by the Israeli government on medical operations, which make it even more necessary that we speak up for them and show solidarity. All right, the next one is for academics, so BSOS. I think that's Conway.
Yeah, I cannot find her. I'm gonna unmute Dory then.
Okay.
Go ahead. BSOS, Nufflin.
Oh, sorry, I got a Slack from her. She,
Then we'll move to Renee.
yeah, could you go to the next one, please?
Yeah, Sarah. Go ahead.
We heard many students try to discredit the Divest UMD movement to bring forth a resolution divesting endowment investments from companies complicit in human rights violations. The Divest UMD resolution is a student issue, and to argue otherwise is to discredit, ignore, and silence the hundreds of students on campus who are behind the movement. Some argue that the SGA should follow on initiatives which decrease the stress of students instead of create stress, especially during such a challenging time. But the SGA has continued to hear contentious legislation despite moving on to online classes, and to gatekeep which bills are worthy enough to be heard is wrong and undemocratic. Even before the resolution was submitted, legislators and students tried to silence our movement, which shows how this was primarily about silencing the Divest UMD movement for personal motives. One student even went as far as to say that we should focus our energy on Hamas, which is just a racist and despicable thing to say. First, you cannot tell an oppressed people how to resist oppression. Second, divestment is about accountability for the unaccountable. It uses an international law framework and nonviolent tactics to call action to Israeli human rights abuses that are not currently addressed and largely ignored by the world, and pressures institutions and corporations complicit in those abuses to end their complicity. We cannot ignore the power dynamics at play, which enable such grotesque human rights abuses.
So residential off-campus outlying is Alawi on.
Still cannot find them.
If not, then
Can-
Sasha.
We just moved to the next one.
Sasha.
Oh, Alawi's here.
Yeah, but he.
I'm so sorry, I missed what happened.
You're number 5. Do you mind reading it?
Yeah, sure. Like if you can give me 1 second to pull it up. Put it on my phone because my thing is lagging. Where's Slack? Can you go to Sasha actually? I'll come back later.
Sure.
Thanks, sorry.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool beans. Number 5.
Yep.
I am an engineering student residing off campus outlying, and I'm writing to encourage the legislature to adopt the findings of the committee to protect student voices both for this semester while we are online and for the future. The committee had a large percentage of students participate in it, and you all are here to work represent the students on this campus. Rejecting the suggestions of students would be belittling to the students who participated in the committee and reinforce the sentiment by several students on the SG on. Whoa, I can't read. Several students that SG does not express their interests. Sorry, everyone. I think I'm dyslexic. Bye.
No worries. So public health.
Historically, Palestinian voices have been silenced in peace talks, governments across campus, and in many other spaces all over the world. The letter circulated through SGA, signed by my own representative, is yet another way in which our voices are attempting to be silenced. While some argue that this letter is not a student issue, it's about my club and therefore is about my voice. SJP was not contacted in any way about this letter, despite being directly cited. Why would you not go to the primary source? As the legislative body, it is your responsibility to represent all voices, not just the majority voice. We are upset and angered that we were yet again disrespected and dismissed before we even got a chance to speak, but we will not be silent.
All right, CMNS, Alicia.
Go ahead.
I'm concerned about many misconceptions, falsehoods, and lies submitted for student concerns by a multitude of students last week. There are many misconceptions about the BDS movement and what its goals are. BDS does not have any particular prescribed political solution, i.e. one state or two state, or how such resolutions are to finally be accomplished. BDS's purpose is to highlight the ongoing issues surrounding the human rights violations of the Israeli government against the Palestinian people, as well as to pressure/encourage progress towards a solution through the 3 methods of boycott, divestment, and sanctions. This is much like how a multitude of governments, companies, and organizations around the world did economically boycott, divest from, and sanction the government of South Africa for its own human rights violations during its period of apartheid. Such a BDS against South Africa was in the hopes of pressuring the government to resolve the issues. And the UMD SGA itself passed a resolution in support of the BDS of South Africa at the time. I would hope that the SGA legislature and those misinformed students please try and educate themselves on the issues of human rights violations committed against the Palestinian people. Additionally, some SGA legislators have written a letter to the speaker attempting to persuade him to reject any prospective divestment bill before any bill has been submitted. This is highly disrespectful, and such legislators should have instead reached out to the UMD SJP if they had concerns on such matters. Such preemptive tactics are an attempt at silencing students.
All right, and then off-campus neighboring. I think if Pontius is here.
Go ahead.
It's line 9, right?
Yes.
I urge the committee to accept the findings. Students worked hard in order to collaborate on the committee findings. It is your job to accept them. Not accepting the finding of the committee further shows students that SGA has no concern for actual students, even after they go through the processes of actually going through the work to actually attempt to work with SGA.
All right, thank you. BSOS rep.
Me?
Conway.
No,
Yeah.
me. Okay. To the legislators of the Student Government Association, with respect to the Divest UMD movement, there are a number of confusions surrounding it. Opponents of the resolution have stated falsely that it is intended to target the whole of Israel and Israeli civil society. However, the divestment resolution, in fact, calls for a targeted divestment of the corporations and companies which are complicit in human rights violations against the Palestinian people. It does not single out a country or people, but targets companies, most of which are United States companies such as Caterpillar, which produces the bulldozers used to destroy Palestinian homes. Beyond this, others claim that the resolution is divisive and shuts down any attempt at dialogue. This is patently untrue. The resolution is what has allowed dialogue to progress in the first place. Palestinian voices have been repeatedly silenced and ignored on this campus. The divestment bill and the campaign surrounding it are critical to the education of students with respect to the systematic injustices which Palestinians endure. Lastly, I'd like to address the letter received by the speaker currently under investigation. The letter was a product of a targeted effort to remove Palestinian voices from the legislative conversation and to remove agency from the organization which advanced the resolution. At no point did the writers of this letter contact SJP or divest UMD, and at no point did they ever signal their purported desire for dialogue. If the opponents of the divestment resolution would like to engage in dialogue, they must give SJP a showing of good faith and actually indicate they are willing to conduct it. Otherwise, it amounts to a little more than the intimidation campaign meant to relieve Palestinians of the opportunity to be heard by their student representatives.
Ellicott community rep.
As a Jewish student on this campus, I'm deeply disappointed by the actions of some of my fellow Jewish students at UMD. Threatening misconceptions have been spread about the BDS movement and about a divestment bill that hasn't even been proposed yet. These rumors and hurtful words are not helping anyone at UMD and are only creating a more divisive environment. I'm frustrated that Students for Justice in Palestine were not reached out to, even though they were cited, and I'm frustrated that students are spreading false information about a bill that A, does not target the Jewish people in any way, and B, is a bill that supports human rights for all people, which I was taught to do because of my Jewish values. I will continue to fight alongside my Palestinian classmates for a world where we are all treated with dignity.
Thank you. Off-campus outlying. So I think Alawi, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
This is number
12.
12, correct. So I'm an engineering student living outside the 20740 zip code. I am writing in regards to student concerns last week and wanted to clear up misconceptions. The divestment legislation that would have been proposed only asked for the university to divest its endowment from companies, especially heavily militarized ones, complicit in the occupation of Palestine. It only targets the CEO of those organizations who are directly harming Palestinians. It would not affect the internships or jobs. It is a non-violent movement and all the demands are clearly stated on their website. So to smear the campaign and analyze it as anything other than a movement for the human rights of Palestinians is in bad faith. Having students write that we should focus on Hamas is extremely unsettling, as anyone can come to the conclusion with a little research that the main oppressor of Palestine is the Israeli government. If you want to look more, look at reputable organizations such as B'Tselem, apologies if I'm speaking incorrectly, UNRWA, Al-Adwa, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Jewish Voice for Peace, and Adalah, who have all well documented the human rights abuses that Palestinians are facing daily. I would also like to address the letters circulating amongst your organization, which I had several legislators tell me about. Shame on you all for allowing such sentiment to be spread among your organization, and everyone who signed it is as complicit in shutting down student voices as the ones who wrote it. As a member of the organization that was singled out on the letter, I am beyond disappointed that such a demonization would take place of a student group, especially such a marginalized one. I have faced a lot of harassment as a Palestinian on this campus, but this is honestly one of the most insulting things I have experienced at UMD. You wonder why students, especially students of color, do not trust SGA. This is your answer as to why.
Thank you. I'll read this one. I'm a member of Students for Justice in Palestine and a Jewish student in the College of Arts and Humanities. I'm writing to express my concern about the letter that was circulated within SGA about our club. I feel that it was irresponsible to make assumptions about the course of action we would be pursuing without even considering talking to SJP beforehand. This feels like just another action in a pattern of many members of SJ not respecting our work as student activists, not assuming that we too have good intentions, and failing to communicate with us and represent our interests. Last week, students said that BDS poses a threat to students on campus, is anti-Semitic, is divisive, and is too quote-unquote emotional. However, this prioritizes the mental health of some students over others. Furthermore, discussing BDS is, I believe that meant to be bold, emotional and challenging. It is challenging for the many Palestinian students of this campus and the many students, including Jewish students like myself, who care deeply about the oppression of Palestinians and this university's complicity in that. Yet just because it is challenging doesn't mean we can stop having hard conversations because we are in the coronavirus crisis and living in new conditions. The conditions for those living in Palestine today, especially those in the Gaza Strip, are critical. The conditions of apartheid are already compounding with the worldwide pandemic and leading to catastrophic results. With this in mind, it seems highly inappropriate for the SGA to deny student activists the chance to fight for what we believe in, not in spite of, but because of the coronavirus pandemic. And then off-campus neighboring, that would be Pontius again.
I am an engineering student who lives off campus, but within the 20740 zip code. I urge you all to accept the findings of the committee and use them for this semesters and semesters to come. The conclusions of the committee were determined after researching the procedures of other student governments and voted upon by legislators and students who worked tirelessly to find a solution to an issue which the SGA has in the past with privacy and safety. It is important to incorporate these procedures into the governing documents of the student government so that students, including legislators, as they are students too, feel safe voicing their concerns or voicing unpopular opinion without the fear or retaliation from their peers.
Thank you. That is all for student concerns for today. So we'll do roll call. I've done roll call. I'm going to say who I believe is absent, and if you are actually here, just yell out. You should have the ability to unmute. So Duong. All right, Neelan. Josie Schaefer. Nishta. And that would be that. All right, so with that, I'll call the 25th meeting of the 2019-2020 legislative session to order. The time is 6:21 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes? Are there any motions on the minutes? If there's a check, then I'll just take that as a motion to approve. Great, so approved. So moving into speakers' time. So first there's a couple updates from the election commissioner. So if you want to unmute yourself.
Hello, friends. As I'm sure you have become aware of by now, campaigning began today. One of the things I wanted to let you guys know is that in the process of verifying the results after the elections are complete, a team of us, including myself, have to check and agree on all the results, one of whom is the Speaker of the Legislature, but as he is also a candidate in this year's election, he's not eligible to be one of the people who verifies it. So it's in the election rules, section 5, if you're curious, that I will appoint someone to take any candidate's place to be confirmed by the legislature. I'm asking at this time that I appoint Grace Dye, who has been serving on the commission with me since we were appointed together. I don't know if someone makes a motion or how that works, but I can take any questions too, but the baseline is that Grace Dye will be stepping in place of the speaker to verify the results at the end of next week.
If there's any questions, just ask them now, and then it would be a motion to confirm.
Gotcha.
Go ahead.
Does anyone else approve of the election results besides the two of you? Like how many people are on
Yes, so I have it in front of me. It's the SGA advisor, myself, the current SGA president, the current speaker, and then one of the governance board members.
Awesome, thank you.
I believe Leonardtown representative had a question.
Yep. Thank you so much. I'll just keep this really quick. So specifically the role of the speaker, and I guess now potentially Grace, is specifically in verifying and calculating the final vote counts for candidate positions as it relates to the elections this semester.
The speaker and now Grace is one of them. We'll all be looking at the same results, and all five of us have to agree that the results we're seeing are the results as they are.
Perfect. Makes total sense. Thank you.
I don't see any other hand raises, so I don't believe there are any other questions. So I'll take any motion to confirm.
Motion to confirm.
Great. Are there any seconds?
Second.
Any objections? Seeing none, so confirmed. All right.
And then, sorry, I just have one more thing. The commission also was hoping to have a mock election tonight to test the system and the ballot, but we ran into some troubles removing last year's candidate. So just keep an eye out in the Slack sometime in the next couple of days, and you'll get a chance to vote between like mascots or dead presidents or something, just to make sure that votes are being able to be cast properly. So sorry that it's not tonight, but it'll be soon.
All right. Yep. And I could, depending on the timeline, I can send that out on the Monday email as well to the org.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
We do this every year where we have to test it just to make sure that it's working again. So, all right. Was that all from Elections Commissioner? Great.
Thank you, guys.
All right. So we'll do Ad Hoc Committee Chair. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Before I actually read the findings of our committee, I would first like to thank every member of this body who has been able to come to our meetings, and also every member of the student body who has been able to come to our meetings, discuss. We've had we had to move things around and have due to both the tight schedule, Jewish holidays, and I also had some personal issues that made this process very interesting. However, after meeting many times, having a vote, all of the provisions that I will be reading have been supported by 2/3 of the frequent going attending committee members. So. Findings by the Committee on the Protection of Student Voices. Based upon the discussions and votes held since the Ad Hoc Committee on the Protection of Student Voices was established by the legislature, we, the members of the committee, hereby find, pursuant to our charge on the conduct of online legislative proceedings, that 1. Student concern section be used to hear comments submitted through the online form until the start of GBM. Concerns should be read in a randomized order so as to weigh each concern equally. Concern should be read by the presiding officer, or if indicated, by one of the representatives, cycled through alphabetically by last name in the case of more than one representative of the student's indicated legislative district. Representatives may opt out of reading concerns for the entirety of the student concern section by informing the presiding officer at the beginning of the student concern section. In the event that a representative opts out of reading concerns or is not present for the reading, if there are multiple representatives at legislative district, responsibility for reading concerns is passed off to other legislators in that district. In the event that all of the representatives of the students chosen legislative district are excused or not present, the responsibilities for reading will be passed on to the presiding officer. Students should only need to give their concerns in this section and may optionally add additional may add identifying information, including but not limited to name, class, major, and legislative district. What information is and is not required or optional should be publicized to the student body before the form becomes available and should be written on the form itself. Students may indicate if they would like to opt out of having their concerns read aloud during the student concern section. These concerns should be read verbatim except to omit profane language as determined by legislative leadership. Student concerns that are submitted to be read aloud that feature profane language will be subject to closed deletion on the specific profanities and shall otherwise be read aloud or be read verbatim as presented by the student. Concerns using harassment or other targeted language violating University of Maryland non-discrimination policy and procedures shall be omitted from being read. Multiple members of legislative leadership shall work to determine what is omitted and appropriately highlight what is not to be read aloud. Comments containing this language should not be considered in tallying totals for or against a particular subject. If it is found that a comment is identical or very similar in wording and structure to 3 or more other comments, then following the third reading of that comment, legislative leadership shall state how many times that comment was given. The remainder of those comments will not be read aloud. Legislative leadership shall work to determine the tally of comments and appropriately highlight the remainder of the comments that will not be read. The concern in this form should be only available to all appointed and elected members of the SGA. The presiding officer may reasonably restrict the time used for the reading of student concerns with respect to the legislative calendar. Legislators should have the option to propose a motion that the time may be extended. The presiding officer must maintain respect and decorum in this session by calling members out of order for the use of targeted language, dismissive tones, and disrespect for other members of the SGA, the UMCP student body, and/or student group, including when reading student concerns. Points of order should be used by members in the chamber to direct the presiding officer's attention to issues that need to be rectified, including noting individuals who have spoken in this manner, including the presiding officer. 3. The legislator should allow any legislator to propose a motion to close the session, temporarily disabling or turning off the live stream for the time set for the discussion of any item in order to protect the privacy of students and legislators. This motion should require a 1/5 vote of the present representatives to pass. The session should remain closed until voting has finished on the item being discussed if there is a vote to be had. Minutes taken during this time should be available to only those present for the closed session, taking the privacy of the individual speaking into account. 4. Legislators should be able to move into private voting on contentious legislation or other topics that may make members of the legislature feel unsafe. This motion should require a 1/5 vote of the present representatives to pass. Private voting should be conducted in a manner where the legislator's vote is confidential to all but the presiding officer and the legislative secretary. Okay, those were our findings. I'd like to just take a few minutes to talk about a little bit of the discussion on some of these items that, if you weren't in the discussions, may feel a little random. And I'd also like to say, so since our chart, we had 2 charges, the first being the conduct of online meetings for the rest of the semester, and also the conduct of in-person meetings for next semester. A lot of these ideas may seem like there are a lot of technical processes for how we've been conducting like the readings that we've been doing at the beginning of these last 2 meetings. And that is because a lot of the ideas that will be in here, a lot of us believe that are great ideas that could carry over into next semester. And I, for instance, and other members of the committee always found it weird that the concerns were never read aloud, even when we were having people come up in person. So a lot of this, if we decide in our next meetings, could still be recommendations to govern things. So the first thing I'd like to talk about the discussion of was the randomized order of concerns. This is because we wanted to, a lot of us thought that it would be best if we're really weighing each concern equally and there's a time limit involved, then every voice that comes before us is equal, whether you submitted the form first or you submitted it last. Everybody should have the same weight. In a similar vein, one of the items on here was about duplicate or identical concerns. This was an idea, this is H. This was an idea that was basically like what a lot of people, when they're submitting concerns, go to multiple friends and they tell them to submit a concern. And that is their right. And just like we have the right to send 1 million letters to our elected representatives in Congress. And the more comments you receive, the more your vote should be hypothetically swayed. However, we've gotten a number of concerns at our last GBM that were all simply just vote for this bill, vote against this bill. And while those concerns all should have weight, one way that we can simply make the process easiest for everybody is to have them read multiple times, but then afterwards announce how many have been read. A lot of ideas on here were carrying over ideas that legislative leadership had already cooked up, such as the cycling through indicated district representatives, which we've done tonight. And we also clarified 2 anti-harassment clauses and 1 anti-profanity clause. This was just because we've never really had a standard for determining what language is or is not harmful. So we thought it would be best to use that. And since we've had problems with profanity before, just using closed deletions, which for those of you wondering, is just bleeping out a bad word.
Can I interject?
Yes.
All right. So with the last couple things that you mentioned, which is tallying how many are repeats and going through and the language and the non-discrimination, completely support it. And we'll do our best with the time restraint that we have, since the forum closes at 6 and these are read at like 6:03. So I will make an active effort. If mistakes occur, just understand it's because of the time, not because of intention.
Right, and there we were very lucky to have Sama be a part of a lot of our conversations about these technical details, talking about what is and is not possible from a legislative leadership perspective, and realizing that we don't have a lot of time to do these things, but since the majority of those items were just involved like highlighting those things in different colors, which we've already seen tonight with us highlighting the non-student in red, we thought that it would be a good idea for us to make an attempt to try our best, especially if the committee finds this to be a good process in any way for next year. But thank you. Yes, right. And also the last one that I'll clarify here is representatives opting out of reading concerns. We thought that it would be most fair to the students who are submitting concerns that if you are a representative and you think that you don't want any kind of live stream recording of yourself reading something that you disagree with on camera because it's potentially triggering to you or for whatever reason, that it would be better for you to not be able to just pick and choose, but to rather just opt out of the concerns equally for everybody, so that each concern can still receive the same kind of weight. To clarify section 2, which is just to clarify which is actually to point out something that already exists in our rules, which is that the point of order can be used to direct the speaker's attention to people who are speaking out of term or using targeted language. So we thought it would be best to remind the legislature of that power. And so lastly are for 3 and 4, which are actual procedures that were recommended to be adopted. And this was to involve first the live stream and then a private voting. The conversation on both of them were very similar. And that involved, for live streams, for instance, we've cut off the live stream before, but we've never had a strict process, and no strict procedure exists in our rules for how to do so. So it was a recommendation after looking at how other Big Ten schools, such as Northwestern, I believe, conduct their business, that they use these standards for these last 2 things. And these were mainly anti-blacklisting efforts by committee members. But that just gives you an insight into our processes. I hope along with the others of the committee, and obviously the people who submitted student concerns, that the legislature does its best to adopt most of these things. And I hope you all join me for our in-person discussions for the rest of the semester.
Great. Because it's like a quote-unquote committee report, what was the vote count? If you don't mind just like typing it in at the bottom.
Okay, well, so we voted on each item separately.
You don't have to do this now, but eventually, do you mind?
I can start doing that for the
That would be great. Yep. All right. So this was sent to me and Kisley last night. So we had some time to look this over and just kind of how we're going to move forward. We're going to adopt or try to adopt to the best of our ability everything in bullet point 1 about the student concerns. With 2 as well, I think just the standing rules of order say that it's only limited to representatives to use points of order. So, but it is a good reminder that if I'm not seeing something, please let me know through the way we've been doing points. And then 3 and 4, I'll have the pro temp talk about more.
Okay, so for 3 and 4, there was a particular issue with it. So these are procedural changes that the committee is asking us to do, which is like whether or not they would be enacted will be decided by the legislature through omnibus. So currently, as the governing documents are, we cannot enact both of them. But considering it's just a meeting after the next one, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Hopefully it's not, but for the time being, we came up with a method that could come as close to this as it can be through Robert Rules. So there is a whole procedure about executive sessions in Robert Rules. This is very important for the coming meetings. So I would really appreciate if everyone actually pays attention to every part of it. So executive session is a closed door meeting. By the closed door meeting will be decided on a few things. So since it is a motion of privilege, the committee, so basically executive session will be a committee where no one is allowed to divulge any information that was discussed in the session outside, and it will be maintained over on a code basis, and the disciplinary actions that would be taken against people who do violate that would be through the normal procedures that we have right now. I would say it's probably through GovBoard or ethics. I'm not sure how we'll proceed with it. But for the session itself, the motion needs a majority vote to pass. It can be made by any legislator at any point of the time during the meeting. The motion leads us into a meeting where people are we only lead up to that meeting just because if there are going to be informations divulged in the debate or discussion, which is relevant to the discussion, but is something that people would not like leaving the members of the organization, basically. This committee is also restricted to the voting members with not exactly voting members, it is restricted to the organization members. And how we are going to do this is that we can also have special invitees on this in these sessions. These will be decided upon by the chair when we move into these sessions, but all these decisions are obviously debatable and can be overturned if you think that any person who is being allowed to sit in the session should not be there. We can definitely work on that. I think the motion to have someone there or not have someone there is a majority as well. And the motion in itself is debatable. So I think that's in itself everything about the motion. Yeah, if there are any questions about it, feel free to Slack me. And if you have any big questions right now, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'll just quickly say that, I think I'm glad that the students met, the ad hoc committee met to discuss this. I think these are very worthwhile discussion points that should come up in CBL and then in omnibus. But clearly the body doesn't trust me to make decisions right now, and so I won't be making decisions. I'm going to be following Robert's rules. And so that is what we found after doing a day of research. Obviously, it was just a day. If anyone finds something different in Robert's rules, please let us know and we will work through it. But for the next 2 meetings, that is how we're going to do our best to proceed. Okay. All right. Finance report. Mr. Vice President.
How y'all doing? It's very short. Please read it. That's the amount in the executive reserves, cabinet reserves, and legislative reserves. Club sport deadline on Friday. Any questions? All right.
Yeah, so in 2 weeks is going to be the allocation bill?
It'll be the last meeting.
You cut out, but okay.
So it'll be on the 20. It should be on the 29th.
Perfect. Just to make sure we can plan for that. And then ledge appeals could potentially be then as well.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions for the Vice President?
Hi, sorry. Mr. Vice President, how can legislators potentially sit in on deliberations this week if they so choose to?
If they so choose to, they can message me and I'll send them the link.
And what time? Sorry, what time?
5 to 9 Eastern Standard Time, Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays.
All right. Well, thank you for the work you do.
No problem.
All right. First reading calendar. So I'm going to read through them. If you would like to move your bill, a motion to suspend the rules, please do it right after I read the bill. So here we'll go. S200415A, a resolution to sponsor a virtual Zumba event, sponsored by the South Campus Commons representative. That's going to go to health and wellness as a primary, comms as a secondary. Next, we have S200415B, a resolution supporting the Health and Wellness Committee's COVID-19 resource guide, sponsored by the South Campus Commons representative. Go to health and wellness as a primary, comms as a secondary. Next, we have S200415C, a resolution asking Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos to postpone final changes to Title IX guidelines until after the COVID-19 pandemic, sponsored by the Denton representative. It's going to go to SMP as a primary and Gov Affairs as a secondary. Next, we have S200415D, an act establishing a formal Latinx Hispanic caucus, sponsored by the Public Policy representative, and that's going to go to DNI. Next, we have S0415E, an act to create informal listening meetings for the Committee on Diversity and Inclusion, sponsored by the business representative. That's going to go to DNI as a primary and comms as a secondary.
Oh, hi. Oh,
Yeah.
Can I wait until after you're done?
If you want to move it, we can move it now.
Yes, I would just like to move it just because of the dates regarding the informal listening meetings, because they're going to be on the 21st and 28th.
Got it.
Don't really have time.
So there's been a motion to, tell me if I'm wrong, but there's been a motion to suspend the rules and move, what is it, S200415E to second reading calendar. Are there any seconds to this motion?
Second.
Any objections? Seeing no objections, so moved. Great.
Thank you.
Yep, of course. All right, next we have S200415F, an act endorsing and publishing the SMP Living Guide, sponsored by one of the off-campus neighboring representatives. That's going to go to SMP as a primary and comms as a secondary. Next, we have S200415D, a resolution in supporting of the creation of an elective University 109 course for the University of Maryland College Park students, sponsored by one of the undergraduate studies representative. That is going to go to academic affairs. Next, we have S200415H, a resolution endorsing the report on the education of the student body on the usage of their student fees, sponsored by the engineering representative. That's going to go to student affairs as a primary and comms as a secondary. Next, we have S200415I, an act supporting the Committee on Alumni Relations and Traditions Tradition Day campaign, sponsored by the South Hill representative. That's going to go to Committee on Alumni Relations and Traditions as primary and comms as secondary. Next, we have S200415J, a resolution urging the administration to provide relief to the families of employees impacted by COVID-19, sponsored by one of the BSOS representatives. It's going to go to Student Affairs. Next, we have S200415K, an act establishing the At UMD campaign, sponsored by one of the off-campus outlying representatives.
Can I get a motion to suspend the rules and move it to second reading calendar?
Yes. Are there any seconds to this motion?
Second.
Any objections? Seeing none, so moved. All right, and then we have S200415L, an act to amend the standing rules of order and to update pronouns in the governing document, sponsored by the North Hill representative. That's going to go to CBO.
Motion to reorder business to move it to the end of second reading.
All right. So are there any seconds to this motion?
Second.
Are there any objections to this motion? All right, seeing none, so moved. And then we've got S200415M, a resolution supporting the Mary Perg Food Insecurity at UMD online event, sponsored by one of the ARHI representatives. That's going to go to health and wellness as a primary, student affairs as a secondary, and comms as a tertiary.
Motion to reorder business and move it to the second reading calendar.
Sure. Are there any seconds on this motion? Any objections? Seeing no objections, so moved. All right, so now we'll go to second reading calendar, and we've got so before we do, reminder, points and motions, please send them to the parliamentarian, to Kisley, the pro temp, and then if there's no response there for a while, send it to the parliamentarian, just so that we can hear all the points and motions properly. All right, so first we've got S200408B, an act to funding an advertisement in the 2020 Diamondback Orientation Guide. We have already done all the student concerns. So is there a committee report?
Yes, sir.
Let's do it.
All right, so it's an unfavorable committee report. I believe it says 0 to 4 to 1. I believe that's what it says. It's whatever's on the doc. So there were a number of concerns brought up during the committee. First is that it was general advertising. If another student group asked to be funded for this, we would probably say no. There's no mention of any specific events or even specific committees, just join the SGA. And so the committee thought that it would not make sense, or not that it wouldn't make sense, that it was a little hypocritical for the SGA to place restrictions on student groups using money and then to go around and say, well, we can go around those restrictions. Also, there was concerns about the actual effectiveness of this method of outreach. There are numerous other digital ways of reaching out, and this one, COVID-19, we don't know when, if ever, like we're going to actually have these orientation sessions. And two, how many students actually read these? Is it the best use of the fee? Is it the best use of the SGA's money? Or could the money be spent in other ways? So yeah, 0 to 4 to 1 with myself as the abstention. It received an unfavorable committee report.
Are there any questions for the VP of Finance? Please raise your hand and I'll... Does the Cambridge rep have a question?
I don't have a question. I just want to overturn the committee report.
Oh, okay, no, that's later. Any other questions? Yeah. All right, seeing no questions, there are a few motions that can be done. Parliamentarian might need to confirm that I'm doing this right. So you can motion to approve the committee report. So that would strike down this bill, and then the bill would not be debated further. You could motion to overturn the committee report, which takes a 2/3 vote, and then, or you could motion to table. I think those are your three options, right, Parliamentarian?
Yeah, that would be correct. Tabling would be, in this case, a majority for reference.
Okay, thank you. All right, so does any motions on this?
Yeah, I'd like to motion to overturn the committee report.
There's been a motion to overturn the committee report, which would require, are there any seconds on this motion? Check marks.
Second.
I heard a second. Are there any objections to this motion?
Objection.
All right, hearing an objection, we'll move into a period of debate. Is it?
Point of order, it's procedural, there's no debate.
Let me check.
Checking
Point of order. Sorry, parliamentarian.
Checking as well whether or not this is indeed procedural.
All right, and then to remind, points of order are only restricted to those who are representatives.
Point of personal privilege, it passed through my committee and it's legislation.
That was an acceptable point.
Motion to report is cannot be made. Yes. I wonder why then we debated bills before. All right.
Do I get a chance to defend my side at all?
Unless there's points of information there, then no. But points of information cannot be used for debate.
Can I have a point of information?
One sec. Before, parliamentarian, am I doing this right?
Yes, so far I believe so.
Thank you. All right, point of information from the off-campus outlying representative.
When is the, apologies if you already said it or anything like that, when is the submission date to get an advocate?
I'll direct that to the Cambridge representative.
So for graphics, I submitted a graphics request back in February, and I've been working with comms. The due date for that is April 23rd. For finance, it's a little bit, it's kind of fluid right now. They just need to know that we have the funding approved, and then we can take the 2 weeks or however long it takes to approve that credit card payment. They kind of know that this is like a strenuous process, and so they're a little fluid on that. But the only hard deadline we have is April 23rd for graphics.
Thank you. Are there any other points?
Wait, could I do a point of clarification on the general advertisement point that the VP of Finance made?
Let me ask the parliamentarian.
I apologize. Repeat the question, please.
So her point of, I guess, would be procedure. Is she able to do a point of clarification about the VP of Finance report, but it can't be debate, right?
That's correct, and we can judge that as soon as it comes.
You have a point of clarification?
Yeah. So the point of clarification is I would not consider this a general advertisement because the purpose of the graphic is not. Like, what would qualify clarification?
Yeah.
That it's not a general. I wouldn't consider it a general advertisement.
Parliamentarian.
I'd be amenable to giving a little bit more time to this to see, but given that it's starting with it's my opinion that it's probably in the realm of debate.
Yeah.
This is not then. This is a statement. This is not a general advertisement because it's not promoting or selling the SGA or its open positions. It's promoting the services and resources that all students can get from SGA, specifically what freshmen would need. So it'd be dedicated to letting freshmen know that we exist and we're here to help.
Thank you. All right. Are there any?
I would like to make a point of information, please. Or a however you say query to the speaker. Or I would like my question directed to the VP of Finance. Is this in line with all of the other like finance bills and stuff you've reviewed? Like, would you, in your like professional expert opinion, deem this an advertisement?
I'll direct that to the VP of Finance.
Point of parliamentary procedure at this point.
Sorry?
Point of parliamentary procedure here.
I'm confused what you're asking, parliamentarian.
I would like to provide clarification on.
Yes, go ahead. I'll let you. Yes.
Very much. Yes, due to the fact that the motion to overturn a committee report is under Section 4 procedural motions, in the standing rules of order, it should not be debated, but points are still, as we are doing so, allowed, but no debate.
All right, so there's a point of it. Thank you. There's a point of information from the off-campus outlying representative directed to the VP of Finance. Go ahead, please.
So, I don't feel comfortable saying my own personal views. I have to abstain on all bills brought before the committee, but I will just restate that the committee 4-0-1 deemed it as general advertising.
Off-campus outlying as a point of information. Alex.
I think you should just ask that. Is there another one off-campus outlying?
No, I don't have one, but the other outlying, but first the neighboring is first.
Off-campus
Pontius.
David.
Yeah, another query to the speaker for the VP of Financial Affairs. Am I reading the correct DG when it says newspaper advertisements are not funded? Would that apply to this situation? I'm sorry, I think most of us are not totally super familiar with the DGs.
I'll direct that to the VP of Finance. I do not believe there's a current speaker because we're not in debate. No one's holding the floor. But parliamentarian can correct me if I'm wrong. But VP of Finance, can you answer that?
That was brought up. The committee did kind of take the Cambridge reps point about it's not technically a newspaper because it's not like the Diamondback has stopped doing newspapers. So the committee didn't classify it under, it was a discussion, but it wasn't ultimately brought up in the report.
Thank you. Pro Temp, who has the next point?
John Rep.
Yeah, I'll keep this really briefly. I guess this is more of like a point of like, I don't know. I feel like it's hard. You know, I'll just pass on me for the moment being. I don't really feel comfortable making my point right now.
Okay.
Business. Tori.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So just to clarify, the discretionary guideline on advertising that we're referencing is 4B, which states general advertising, meaning advertising not targeted for a specific program or event is not funded, with the exception of banners, table throws, or similar items that will stay within the group. Seeing as this isn't an item that stays within the group, and
that's debate. Sorry.
I'm just trying to give clarification since that was the point of information that Alex had as to like what the committee had like thought about like this specific thing. Like that's our justification, is that it is general advertising in our opinion, and we wouldn't fund a student group who came and requested this for us. So that is why we ultimately came to the decision that we did.
All right, thank you. Leonard Town Rep.
Yeah, sure. I'd like to provide like a little point of clarification as to like sort of like the history of like these sorts of things, just like broadly, in discussions regarding sort of like the history of how like the SGA has connected with people, which is sort of the basis of this bill. And this is separate from that issue. This is just related to like my experience in like the CART 100 years thing, is that like there often has been, and again, like questions of precedent.
I think this might be debate parliamentary.
Yeah, it leans more in a debate than it is anything. I'll retract.
Off-campus information. Pontius.
Retracted. Never mind.
Okay. Cambridge representative has a point of information as well.
Yeah, so if just like, I guess it's like kind of parliamentary procedure as well. So if we like don't overturn the committee report, that's completely killing the bill. Like if we accept the committee report, that's completely killing the bill. But if we overturn the committee report, that's not saying, like that doesn't like expedite the bill. That just says we can go into general debate about it.
Correct, actually, the former point that you made there. If this committee report were to be accepted in its current form, it would be automatically recommitted to the Finance Committee. Subsequent to the Standing Rules of Order, the top of page 11, subsection I, that's motions on reports, and then under that clause 2, should the motion not pass, the legislation shall be automatically considered recommitted. But then to the second point of that question, as I understand it, if we were to overturn this report, then we would be able to move into general debate, but there still is general debate.
Okay, so it's not like we're accepting it if we overturn it, it's just moving it into general debate.
All right. Are there any other points? Pro Temp, are there any other points?
None to me.
Okay. Seeing that there's no more points and there's no debate, we'll move into a period of voting. The motion was to overturn the report. So a vote of yes would overturn the report. A vote of no would approve the report. So I'll repeat that. A vote of yes will overturn the report, and a vote of no will approve the report. Please vote. And if there's no abstentions on a procedural motion. With a vote of 11 to 21, the motion fails. Parliamentarian, does that mean it is the recommendation is approved?
So again, should the motion not pass, should this motion being the motion to overturn in this specific scenario, should that motion not pass, as it just does not, the legislation shall be automatically considered recommitted. So it's my understanding that then the Finance Committee can do as they wish with this from here.
I see.
Point of parliamentary procedure.
Yes.
Would it just come back on second reading next week?
So one potential would be if the committee does not find a way to sort of solve this issue, they could essentially table this in committee. It could just kind of hang out there and nothing would happen to it. Hopefully it would be possible to come to some sort of solution, but not necessarily would it just come back on second reading.
So, I guess this is a point of information. Do I have, is there any point between recommitting and stuff that I have a chance to defend the bill at all, or talk about it in a debate setting to inform people on what's happening?
In front of this body, probably not, but I assume that would be up to you and the committee to try to work something out on a mutually agreeable resolution.
Point of parliamentary procedure.
Sure.
In the SRO's section, or what is this article? On the section 6 debate, it says that debate on under questions, section 6, 1F says that there is debate on reports, 10 minutes equally divided.
Apologies, are you looking section 6 debate on other questions?
Yes.
And then what was the question again then?
I guess I'm just correcting you. It's not
adjusting anything, but
I have a point of parliamentary procedure. So once when the motion of overturning fails, won't it come back to us to be able to do a motion to table or motion to approve the committee report, so either way, so approving will kill the bill and tabling will give finance another week to look at it?
Again, the way the standing rules currently function right now is that should the committee come back to us with an unfavorable report, and should that report fail to be surmounted, assuming that it could be unfavorable again, then it would kind of be in this endless feedback loop of recommittal and reconsideration and recommittal and reconsideration.
So can the legislature right now make a motion to approve the report?
No, because we just made them. Well, even if this were to be approved, and I suppose that would be next after the motion to overturn failed, but seeing as they're essentially two sides of the same coin, that we are not going to be able, assumably, if kind of reason holds, to approve this report, or we approve the report, I suppose, I apologize, I'm getting caught up, by failing to overturn it, then it's getting recommitted either way, so.
Okay. So it's just gonna be this vicious cycle.
You could also rescind the bill.
Get adjusted, or something is rescinded, or something like that. Northhill?
Could you repeat your parliamentary procedure point where you said where the automatic recommittal thing is in the SROs?
Yes, top of page 11 as you look at it in the PDF. And so I'm looking just above subsection J. This is in subsection I, motions on reports, clause 2. Should the motion not pass, the legislation shall be automatically considered recommitted. And in this case, the motion applies to one of the following motions from 1A, 1B, and 1C. And so since we had the motion, which was the motion to overturn, and since we then had that motion not pass, the clause in 2 applies and the legislation shall be automatically considered recommitted.
Wait, what's the section number again?
I'll start over. The section number here, as I scroll up in procedural motions, is section 4. I believe this is Article 5. Article 5 points in motion, yes. So the top of page 11.
Cool, thank you.
Yep, of course.
All right. Are there any? So I guess the legislation is recommitted to the Finance Committee and will appear on second reading calendar next week.
And point of information, when are deliberations again for Finance Committee? When did they meet?
The VP of Finance said that the deliberations were from 5 to 9 on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday.
All right, thank you.
Then we have S200408D, a resolution urging administration to postpone spring 2020 commencement ceremony sponsored by the BSOS representative. Is there a committee report?
Hello, yes, there is. We voted 10 to 0 to 1 with me being the abstention. There were no amendments and no comments. Everything was positive.
Are there any questions for the VP of Student Affairs? All right, seeing none, is the body ready for the main question?
No.
All right. Hearing no, we'll move into a period of debate. 60 minutes equally divided. Would the bill sponsor like to hold the affirmative?
Yes, please.
Would anyone like to hold the negative? Seeing none, the negative will remain open. Would the BSOS representative like to yield time?
Yes, I seek to yield as much time as I may consume. All right, so I'll just keep it pretty brief, but I just want to talk about like my own experience in the bill a little bit. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you to the commencement petition organizer, Gabriella Grant, and to the COVID-19 student task force, who really worked hard on pushing this initiative. And I'm just really happy that I could have been a part of it and to help further their interest. So, 4 years ago, I, like so many others, received my acceptance letter to the University of Maryland. And in the time since, I have gone through a lot. I have grown from this directionless teenager into a driven young woman. I've faced setbacks and hardships. I've met friends that have turned into family, and I've created a home on this campus. And while I'm excited for this next chapter in my life and proud of how far I've come, it's bittersweet knowing that in just a few weeks, I'm going to have to leave it all behind. However, what's worse is the feeling as though I'll never get the chance to properly say goodbye. All of us deserve the chance to close out this chapter in our lives, whether to celebrate what we overcame, to mourn what we're leaving behind, or a mixture of both. Commencement is a time for us to look back, to appreciate these years for what they were, and to let go. Whether college has been the best 4 years of your life or the worst, there's something all of us can gain from taking part in commencement. For some, this will be the first time anyone in their family has received a college degree. For some, this will be a reward for financially supporting themselves all through college. For some, this will be a way to honor their peers who didn't make it to this stage. And for some, this will be a reminder of their strength when at times they never thought they'd make it here. Everyone deserves a commencement, whether you're graduating after 3 years or 5, with honors or job or grad school acceptance or no plan at all. And there's a reason why every single senior on Ledge is co-sponsoring this bill. It's because all of us believe in the importance of commencement and the importance of closing this out properly. And that's why I'm urging all of you to support this bill so that when this pandemic finally subsides, we as the graduating class can finally celebrate and gain closure after 4 years of hard work, tears, and lifelong memories. We're not asking for much, just to be promised that when it is safe to do so, we will have the opportunity to walk across the stage and say goodbye to what has been basically our entire world for one last time. We want to ensure that commencement is held in accordance with the wishes of the graduating class, and that we are held at the center of this decision-making process. It's already hard enough knowing we'll never take another in-person class, or that we'll never leave one last offering to testudo, or we'll never get our last formal or end of the year banquet. But we don't have to make it worse by also not knowing whether or not we'll get to walk across the stage. Thank you.
What would you like to do with your time?
I yield it back to the floor. I don't know.
Thank you. Seeing that the time, could you pause the time, please? Seeing that the time has been yielded back to me, would anyone like to seek the affirmative floor? Would anyone like to seek the negative? Seeing that both remain open, we'll move into a period of voting. A vote of yes will be in support of this bill, S200408D. A vote of no will be against this bill. Please vote. You may abstain by using the hand raise. The vote of 31 to 0 to 2, the bill passes. Yay, congrats. 31 to 0. Next, we have S200408E, an act allocating money to the Student Crisis Fund. Is there a committee report?
Yes, sir. So this was, I believe, 4 to 0 to 1 in favor. The vote count is really down there. No amendments at the time of the committee's consideration. The committee did also want to point out that a lot, this was like a lot more difficult. This would not normally be allowed. The reason that this is being allowed right now, both by the committee and by like state law, is that there's guidelines on the use of state monies. I believe it was actually the president and the chief of staff, they can correct me if I'm wrong, got approval, or some people got approval from auditors, and it was like a very long process. This would not normally be allowed in like any other year, but because it's COVID-19, because there's no way to give out students stuff normally, because we didn't refund any of our fee, we were granted an exception by like multiple different people. So yeah, 4 to 0 to 1 in favor.
Is that a hand raise as a question?
So I added amendments after the fact, so
and they're fairly substantive, so because it's not just like a date change. So if you could move into a period of voting and then just amend, and then we'll vote if that's okay with the BSOS rep.
Yeah, I added the amendments. I just didn't know if, like, you wanted me to talk about them or like.
That's up to you. I mean, we'll have to. So first we have to do something with the committee report.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. And then, so are there any questions for the VP? All right, seeing none, I'll take any motion on the committee report.
Motion to approve the committee
There's
report.
been a motion to approve. Are there any seconds? Any objections? Seeing none, so approved. Is the body ready for the main question? This is BSOS rep. Where you
can no.
No, seeing no, we'll move into a period of debate, 60 minutes equally divided. Would the bill sponsor like the affirmative floor?
Yes, please.
All right. Will anyone like the negative? Seeing none, the negative remains open. What would you like to do with your time?
I seek to yield as much time as I may consume.
Yep.
So I have an amendment that I proposed. We would be adding Addendum D, which is basically a screenshot of correspondence with its Val. She works in SORC, and she basically, like, it tells what permission we got and the sort of hoops we had to jump through to make this happen. because we just want to emphasize that this is not something that can normally happen. Normally, if the SGA were to donate its money to charity, it would be illegal because it is state funding and it has to be used for specific purposes. However, we did get special permission for this, and seeing as these are unprecedented times, they're making an exception for us. So I think it's important to have this addendum so people don't use this in the future to justify other reasons why we can use the SGA's money to give to charity under normal circumstances, and also so that you can see why this is allowed in these circumstances.
All right, so there's been a motion to amend to add Addendum D into the bill. Are there any seconds? Any objections? Seeing none, so amended. What would you like to do with your time?
Seek to yield as much time as I may consume. Yeah, so I just want to give a quick thank you to Ireland, Ben, and Hunter, who were all super integral in helping to create the bill. Basically, if we were to pass this bill, it would effectively allocate $65,000 to the Student Crisis Fund, which, as a lot of us know from emails, has been depleted. So this is money that would directly benefit students who are going through a financial crisis, especially within the wake of COVID-19. They've been overwhelmed by the number of requests. And I also just want to emphasize that this is money that would have gone to students or would have been used under normal circumstances. Like if we had business as usual, we would have used this money for our own programmatic purposes, or we would have allocated it to student groups who would have used it to hold events, to purchase different items. However, because of COVID-19, this money isn't going to be used, and the university has decided not to refund the student activities fee. So it's essentially just going to sit there. And we thought, why not put it to better use by sending it back to students who are in need? So yeah, I highly encourage everybody to vote yes on this bill, because this is one like actual tangible way that the SGA can support students and help students, especially during this crisis. So I reserve my time.
Great. So seeing that the time has been reserved, would anyone like to seek the negative floor? I see a hand raise. There's no more hand raise.
I was seeking the affirmative, but it's
Okay. So then I'll ask, what would the BSOS rep like to do with their time?
I yield my time to what's your position?
North Hill.
The North Hill rep.
Thank you. I seek to yield as much time as I may consume. So I just wanted to say that I'm very glad that this bill has gone through. Last semester, I had to use the Student Crisis Fund to pay for some unexpected medical expenses. And of course, there wasn't a global crisis going on and the funds weren't being depleted. But on their website, they normally say that you'll be able to hear about if your request has been approved and maybe get your funds in something like a 2-week period. I applied at like 10 p.m. and I received everything that I wanted from the fund, everything that I requested from the fund literally the next day, and additional support because of some food insecurity that I talked about in my application. And so this is just a very, just very personal to me that we put all of the money that we can into this fund for all of those people who are struggling out there. I yield back.
Seeing that the time has been yielded back to the BSOS rep, what would the BSOS rep like to do with their time?
Can we call the question?
So you can yield it back to me.
Yield it back to you then.
Yep. Seeing that the affirmative side has been is open and the negative side is open, would anyone like to seek either time? Seeing no, we'll move into a period of voting. So a vote of yes will be in support of this bill. A vote of no will be against this bill, and abstentions are allowed since this is a substantive motion. So BSOS rep Sarah, please vote. Education rep, please vote. With a vote of 32 to 0 to 1, the bill passes. Congratulations. Then we'll move into S200415E, an act to create informal listening meetings for the Committee on Diversity and Inclusion, sponsored by the business representative. Since this has been moved up, there should not be a committee report. I'll ask, is the body ready for the main question? I'm going to clear all because I don't know if the checks are left over. Is the body ready for the main question? All right. Hearing yes, we'll move into a period of voting. A vote of yes will be in support of this bill, and a vote of no will be against this bill. Please vote, and you are able to abstain. Vsauce rep. Perfect. So with a vote of 33 to 0 to 1, the bill passes. Congratulations. All right, next we have S200415K, an act establishing the At UMD campaign sponsored by the off-campus outlying representative. Since there is no official committee report, but there are amendments, I will ask the bill sponsor. They look just like dates. So are these technical amendments?
They would be technical amendments. They would be extending the deadline. They would be extending the campaign towards the end of the semester.
Perfect. So I'll just add these as technical amendments. I don't know if that's okay with the bill sponsor.
I'm down for that. I like it. It's good.
All right. Is the body ready for the main question on this bill? All right, hearing yes, we'll move into a period of voting. A vote of yes will be in support of this bill. A vote of no will be against this bill, and you are able to abstain. Please vote. With a vote of 33 to 0 to 1, the bill passes. Next, we have S200415L, an act to amend the standing rules of order and to update pronouns in the governing documents.
Motion to reorder business to make this the last thing we do.
All right.
I didn't originally try to do that.
I see. Sorry. Are there any seconds to this motion?
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, so moved. We'll look at S200415M, a resolution supporting the Mary Berg Food Insecurity at UMD online event sponsored by one of the ARCU representatives. Since there isn't, there are substantive changes. Or no, the committee, is there an unofficial committee report? Does the bill sponsor know if there's an unofficial committee report?
From Health and Wellness.
Yeah, I'm assuming you were there. Or I guess since the director isn't here, we'll move into a period of debate if you so choose, and then you can amend it like that. Does that work?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So I'll ask, is the body ready for the main question?
No.
Hearing no, we'll move into a period of debate. Would the bill sponsor like to hold the affirmative?
Yes.
Would anyone like to hold the negative? The negative will remain open. So what would you like to do with your time?
I seek to yield as much time as I may consume. Motion to amend the bill.
Block amend, like everything as a block that we see. All right, so there's been a motion to amend all of the amendments that have been put in by the Director of Health and Wellness, which looks like there's an addendum, and then some things in clause 9 and 12. So are there any seconds on this motion to amend? Are there any objections? Seeing no objections, it will be amended. All right, so the floor is still yours. What would you like to do with your time?
I yield my time back to the speaker.
Thank Thank you. So seeing that the time has been yielded back, would anyone like to seek the negative? All right, seeing that both floors remain open, we'll move into a period of voting. A vote of yes will be in support of this bill. A vote of no will be against this bill. Please vote now. So with a vote of 33 to 0 to 1, the bill passes. All right, now we'll move into S200415L, an act to amend the standing rules of order and to update pronouns in the governing document sponsored by the North Hill representative. Since CBL has been working on this, I'll ask from the parliamentarian, is there any type of unofficial committee report, or how do you want to proceed through this?
Sure. So I asked the legislature to move to the action plan, which is kind of before the bill, and this is describing the procedure we'll undertake here. Sorry, clearing my throat. Okay, thank you very much. So we will adopt the new standing rules of order. This is earlier than was expected, but we are still ready to do so. And please understand that debate will be very limited here so that we can get through the body of what we are proposing here as changes. Note that if you are trying to make new changes outside the scope of those which are proposed in Addendum A, which we'll get to in just a second, they won't be considered germane by the chair. And I ask that of leadership as a whole, just please bear with me. But if there are amendments on amendments, they may be taken if they're deemed completely necessary. So the formal term for what we're going to be doing here is in the committee on the whole, and I assume that the pro tempore will get to that in a second as usual, but we'll be considering Addendum A seriatim, which is to say line by line. So as determined to be appropriate at the discretion of leadership, we'll consider specific questions together. So if there's two things that essentially say the same thing, they can be the same question. And we'll try as hard as possible to highlight things to visually indicate to you where votes will be conducted. On specific changes, it will be, I hope that it can be my prerogative to just briefly explain what's going on. I ask that those who have proposed amendments to not speak up unless there is a grave error that I or somebody else make that requires a point of clarification. If there's no objection, the question will be approved by acclamation. If there is objection on any question, there may be 10 minutes of debate evenly divided. And this follows through the precedent actually of the House of Representatives, which uses the committee on the whole often in order to amend very small changes in legislation or something like that. Extending debate will not be recognized here. Please message each other, message me. Please use Slack as much as possible to communicate. Just because our time will be so limited here and we may be going to the wire tonight, even though this was unexpected. If you need to direct points of information to me, please do so, or to anybody else informally. If you need to do so formally, okay, but please try to exhaust your other options first. And then just for reference, so yes, CBL has been working on many of these such changes, and we will try to prioritize those changes first as we go through this document, just because those are the things which we have more formal opinions on and can explain better. Those changes which we have not considered, which is roughly 50% or so of this document, will be the last changes we consider in the session. And then there will also be some mechanism that the bill sponsors proposed to consider the recent Committee on the Protection of Student Voices changes by the whole as well. And pronouns in the governing documents will be adjusted at one point by acclamation. And so that, along with most other technical amendments, will be considered probably by myself. Is something that can be adjusted later on, just as any grammatical change could be. But to explain that a little further, I think the intent of this bill, and please correct me, Mr. Northill, should that be inappropriate, would be to change instances of his or her or variants thereof to their and other appropriate gender neutral pronoun.
That is correct.
I have a question. Given that I was not prepared, and I believe most of the body was not prepared for this, is there a way to motion to table till next week?
I would strongly disapprove.
I'm asking a parliamentarian procedural question. There's no.
It would be possible to do so at this point. I would also suggest that people should ideally have objected to this and known what was going on at the time when we considered moving to second reading.
Okay. All right. So unless there's a motion, we'll, I guess, proceed. So Pro Temp, would you like to make the motion?
Okay. Motion to dissolve the Legislative Assembly and move into a committee of the whole with the Speaker as the chair of the committee and added members being the Executive Board, excluding Chief of Staff, Deputy Chief of Staff.
All right. Are there any seconds on this motion? Any objections to this motion? Seeing none, we'll move into committee of the whole. In the committee of the whole, if I step down, the pro temp becomes the acting speaker. All right, so parliamentarian.
Thank you very much. And we're off to the races. And this is Addendum A, the copy of the SGA Standing Rules of Order, the working copy on which the committee has been adjusting. So just again, for reference, we will try to move on. There may be some points at which we desire to kind of skip around things just to make them as clear as possible to the body as a whole. Of course, many of you probably haven't seen this document before, and that's totally all right. And we'll try to make this as painless as possible and respect your time in the middle of a busy week. With that said, again, please respect the time limits, which we've set out, 5 minutes per side. That's 10 minutes overall, evenly divided. And please, if you don't have serious objections to a change, there's no need to object just for the sake of objection. With all that said, we're going to progress. Some changes are kind of floating out in the middle of space in Google Drive. I'm not sure why, but we'll move to see where changes have been made in the document as stated. At this point, I think the first question that will be before the body is whether or not to add page numbers. Is there any objection at this point to that matter? This is technical. Seeing no objection as such, and I'm looking around just to make sure in the participants tab, I'm assuming that this will work well. Yes, North Hill.
Could you just slow down like a couple syllables?
Apologies, debate has taught me rather poorly.
Parliamentarian, if there's no objections to things, I can go through and add them.
Yes, so can I.
You don't have to worry about that. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and just for the body in general, please try to take any leadership accepting changes on trust. The history of this document will be made available for review at some point, but we're trying our best here. Everybody is me, the speaker, the pro tempore, everybody. With that said, this is a definitional change proposed by the Chief of Staff that I would prefer to table. Additionally, there is no committee report on it. As such, then, this is an unfavorable change by the committee in terms of allowing the president to debate in a procedural change there. It was unfavorable, so it will be at the back of our agenda in the priority. An additional unfavorable change was proposed by the Vice President of Finance to change the succession. This was unfavorable. I'm looking here until we get to a favorable change. And here we are. The first favorable change which the committee has to offer to the committee on the whole is in terms of allowing for the parliamentarian to directly address the legislature using a point of parliamentary procedure if it is not being followed. Are there any objections to allowing the parliamentarian to address the body? It would be ironic if there were. With that, seeing as such, this will be an accepted change. And so too will this corresponded. I believe that this was friendly to the original change just to ensure that the parliamentarian does not abuse their power. As such, there was a proposal for a sergeant at arms for the legislature that was unfavorable, and I apologize, I am trying to get into more substantive matters here. There were many changes made more recently after the committee was proposing things. There were also many unfavorable changes at this point. This was an unfavorable but contested change, which we'll return to in terms of the definitions for the speaker's time versus the presiding officer's time. And again, for those of you who have proposed these amendments, please feel free, if you so wish, to rescind them if you don't feel that they're going to be a useful consumption of our time.
Parliamentarian, I believe you skipped one with the roll call and call to order.
Thank you. That is correct. Yes. So yeah, this would be to, what just happened? For all of you, please try not to add spaces 56 times. That's difficult. This would be to switch the order of the first few items on the legislative agenda to allow roll call to be first, call of order to be second, and then to have student concerns and general announcements. Are there any objections? Yes.
Mr. Parliamentarian, there's a point of information by off-campus neighboring, Pontius.
Okay.
Yeah, point of information. For the first part of this of the standing rules of order, is there going to be any other opportunity for legislators to submit suggested changes to this part of the document, or is that closed after the bill is adopted?
Given that this bill is being adopted right now, I think it would be out of order to propose additional amendments to the standing rules of order at a later time. Such amendments could still be proposed at some later point in time, but it would not be the case that we would return to this document in the omnibus proceedings, given that we're trying to do it now. Maybe that's a question to be directed to the bill sponsor.
Right, let's roll call to order.
I have a point of information.
Mm-hmm.
So you said that if I have something I proposed and I want to rescind it, can I just resolve it? I just want to make sure I'm not doing something wrong.
If you yes, so
okay, thanks.
Yeah, you can always take away things.
That's probably a good idea if you don't feel the need for it.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to save us time and not do anything like sneaky or anything.
No, yeah, much appreciated. And in all of this, we assume good faith on everybody's parts.
And on top of that, I will go through it as soon as I get a chance and clean it up and present it to the ledge for final verification before it's posted on the website. Just so you know, if we make changes and the enters mess up, we're not going to take time right now to fix it. I'll do it on my own time.
That's favorable. Yeah, good. Okay, any further points of this before we move back to?
I have a point of clarification.
Of course.
So I just stepped out to refill my water bottle and I came back and I'm very confused right now. So is this like a mini omnibus where we're going over the SROs?
Yes.
Yes, and that's the point.
Yes. All right. So to catch you up, we're now on page 3 at the bottom. The only substantive changes that I remember is that we added page numbers.
That is where we are so far. There will be.
All right. So order of business to move roll call and call to order before student concerns.
Yes. Are there any objections at this time to changing this matter? Seeing none, we'll.
Yes, I'll do it.
Sorry?
Oh, I can change it.
Okay, that's fine. And corresponding changes. Wonderful. Okay, unfavorable change there. And then motion corresponding with the in general structural change that we've made a couple times now to allow the CFO to take over the allocations job of the Vice President of Financial Affairs. This is in some sense a technical change, but was considered by the committee to be important to reflect the new CFO role. Are there any objections to considering this is the Chief Financial Officer's report as opposed to the report of the VP of Financial Affairs? The student body president?
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm confused. Everything from this is coming from a bill about changing pronouns in the SROs, right? So can we consider the main question of the bill?
Clarification.
That's not correct.
That is not a point of clarification. It's informal debate. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. That is a separate clause in the bill. It can be divided out, but the main point of the bill and what most of the bill reads about is about changing the SROs.
Can I motion or I guess there's not motion. Can we separate the question then?
Yes, but that's not a question for me.
If we would like to separate the question between adding the pronouns and going through the SROs now, that is something that we can do. I believe. Parliamentarian?
Yes, so seeing as we're currently in the committee on the whole, another decision which might have been useful to have considered more fully when we made it, but even still, I believe that it would be to consider moving out of the committee and back into separating the questions.
I have a question to the student body president. Do you want us to consider the rest of the SRO today as well? Or how are we dividing? Are we going to table it later on? Like the rest of the books? Harlan?
I'm sorry, my internet just went out for a second. Can you repeat that?
So what is the intent of separating the question? I just don't want us to go in a loop again. So are we planning to table the rest of the SROs for later and just do the pronouns today now? Because we can take an informal vote on it right now, and then we can think about it, tabling the rest of it for omnibus.
I'm sorry, my internet went on again. Can you repeat that one last time?
Is your internet fine now?
I think it should be.
Yeah, okay. So it's just a question. So what is the intent of separating the question? Is your intent to table the rest of the bill to omnibus and just have the pronouns being discussed today? Or are we going to just discuss pronouns first and then discuss SRO today as well?
Yes, my intent would be to table the rest of this until omnibus.
Speaker, I would suggest, can we take an informal vote on it right now so that I can just make motions planning on those?
One such a straw poll point of parliamentary procedure would not be in order with Robert's rules, but first I'd also like to recognize a potential motion, I believe, from the off-campus neighboring representative.
Well,
Yeah,
go for it.
Sorry.
I think it's probably in the same vein, so.
Am I good?
Yes. You don't need to make points, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to motion to move out of the committee on the whole. Committee of the whole, committee on the whole.
With what reasoning, if you could?
I think I was confused and feel a little misled about what this bill was about. I don't think we're ready for this.
So how about?
And I don't like the fact, if I could add one last point, I don't like the fact that people are foreclosed from making any other changes. I think there were people who can attend CBL who may have had other ideas for the standing rules of order who now have kind of no chance at all, no even time to think about potential changes or workshop any changes.
So how about before? May I?
Of course.
So before we do, because there seems to be division, and we're in a committee of the whole, so we're not completely bound to rules, but we do have some. I would like a quote unquote informal vote just to get a sense of the room, because we're online and I have no clue what anyone's thinking right now. So if you would like to proceed with going line by line with the standing rules of order as discussed in this bill, please say yes. And if you would rather table it for another day, allowing the committee to meet, make changes as the neighboring, please vote no, just so that I can get a sense of where this room is at. This is not binding. I just want a sense.
Mr. Speaker, if I may clarify one thing, nothing in this bill, and when I wrote it, was intended to shut off the deadline for CBL to talk about SROs at all, but it was to make the work, allow us to consider the work that has been done so that our omnibus doesn't go on forever. There's nothing in here that shuts off deadlines for other additions.
And I appreciate that, but as the neighboring representative said, we're currently in the middle of working on some of these. I attended the last CBL meeting and there was confusion about the term officers that was still being discussed.
If I may provide a point of clarification here.
Go for it.
My apologies if this was started and it wasn't completely clear to everybody. Nobody's intent here was to mislead. But yes, we are still working on this document. There are still changes being proposed. But additionally, I don't pragmatically see how we could have considered or will consider everything here and not shut off the deadline to be able to move on to other governing documents. That was not communicated to me or
to myself either. So I think the sense in the room is to a vote of 9 to 22, with the 22 saying we should table for another week. So I heard, was the off-campus neighboring's motion, would you like to move out of the committee of the whole?
Yeah.
All right.
Again, a suggestion to off-campus neighboring and speaker.
Yes.
We can still consider the question at hand of pronouns in the committee and then go back.
We could consider that in the bill itself.
I think we should just consider that in the bill itself and divide I would say, I would look personally favorably, procedurally speaking, and tell me if I'm out of line, parliamentarian, to move out of the committee of the whole, divide the question between pronouns and the rest of SRO, vote on those separately, and then do as the votes say.
Yeah, I'm in accordance with that. I think that would probably be the best to preserve everybody's sanity.
Pro Tem, what would you say?
No, I'm fine with that. Go ahead.
Okay. So again, there's been a motion to move out of the committee of the whole made by the off-campus neighboring. Are there any seconds to this motion? That would be checks.
No, but can the off-campus neighboring specify, are we taking in any of the amendments that that the parliamentarian just went over right now?
Wouldn't that be once we move out of the committee as a whole?
No, yeah.
If I can reset those changes, that's my primary concern.
Pass or not?
But the thing is, if we don't take them, then you can just remake them and then we can look at it next week.
Yeah, I mean, if the body's fine with considering those to be acceptable changes, I don't think we've really moved heaven or earth here.
Okay. We have not. We added page numbers and changed the order of roll call.
That's give the parliamentarian the ability to address the body finally. Just kidding. Yeah.
All right. Would the off-campus neighboring representative repeat their motion just so that we're all on the same page, please?
I would like to move that we move out of the committee of the whole and back to the bill.
Thank you. So there's been a motion to move out of the committee of the whole. Are there any seconds on this motion? I see checks. Are there any objections? I see X's. Pro Tem, what do we do when there's objection to moving out? Is this a procedural motion?
Wait, my internet is going out. Can you repeat that?
Yeah. There's been objections to moving out of the committee of the whole.
Yeah, this is a procedural motion.
I see this as procedural.
It will directly go to
as advised that this is procedural motion, please vote. A vote of yes will be to move out of the committee of the whole and into the bill itself. A vote of no would be to stay in committee of the whole to continue reviewing the bill line by line. All right. My vote is a vote of 33 to 1. 33 to 1. The motion carries, so we'll move out of the committee of the whole. I believe someone was planning to make another motion, but I would look favorably on a motion to divide.
I'm happy.
Well, since Madam President cannot make the motion,
yes. But for motion to divide the question, you do not need to hold any floor, right? Parliamentarian?
Right, you don't need, that's correct.
Yes, that's correct. Sorry,
All right, so I would look favorably on a motion to divide the question as we had discussed. Is there any motion to divide the question?
Yes, motion to divide the question.
There's been a motion to divide the question, I believe, from the off-campus neighboring representative.
It was from the Leonardtown representative, but
from the Leonardtown representative. Are there any seconds? Oh, and which way are we dividing? Could you specify, please?
Yes, I would love to. Specifically dividing on the matter of changing pronouns in the SROs from the line-by-line sort of query investigation we were in the committee of the whole.
So replace pretty much, if you're looking at the bill, separating clause 1 through 9 with clause 10.
Yes, that sounds about right.
Okay, just to clarify. So again, there's been a motion to divide the question between clauses 1 through 9.
Point of clarification.
10. Yes.
You also should take out, I don't know what this is. You should also take out line 6.
Go ahead.
Yeah, as well.
So 6 and 10, and then 1 through 5, 7 through 10. Fine. So are there any seconds to this motion? Are there any objections to this motion to divide? Seeing no objections, the question is now divided. We will first, parliamentarian, which one should we consider first?
I'm sorry, of the two divided questions?
So now we've divided the question. We have the first part, which is all the standing rules of order, and the second, which is the pronouns. Should we consider first the pronouns or the remaining standing rules of order?
certainly my understanding that the body wants to consider the pronouns and not the other thing.
Okay, I'll follow the parliamentarian's advice. So do we need? So is this like so should I ask if the body is ready for the main question?
Could you clarify the main question?
The main question would be to vote on adding the pronouns. Because we've divided there's now two main questions, correct?
Yep.
And so the first one that we're going to consider is the pronouns. And the second one is going to be the remaining standing rules of order. Is that correct, parliamentarian?
That is correct. Thank you.
So is the body ready for the first question regarding the pronouns? I'm going to say there's no objection, so we'll move into a period of voting on whether or not to change the pronouns to be gender neutral in the standing rules of order. With a vote of 33 to 0 to 1. It passes, and so we have, or 30, yes. So then the pronouns will be changed in the standing rules of order before next meeting. I can promise that. So now the second question is regarding the remaining standing rules of order. If someone wants to do a motion to table or any type of motion, I will have to hear no so that we can move into the debate. So hearing no, so I'll ask, is the body ready for the second question? Hearing no, we'll move into a period of debate, 60 minutes equally divided. Parliamentarian?
Yeah.
I'm doing this correctly?
Sure, fine.
All right, so 60 minutes equally divided. Would the bill sponsor like the affirmative floor?
Yes.
All right. Would anyone like to seek the negative? All right. Seeing none, the negative floor will remain open. The affirmative, what would you like to do with your time?
I seek to yield as much time as it may consume. Okay. I'm just going to clarify a few things. None of this mess was my intention. And I apologize for people who feel misled. But I'm very glad that you guys passed the first question. Okay, so from being a CBL member and being a person being a good CBL member this semester, a lot of people have, a lot of members are concerned about amendments that have been proposed to just both the bylaws and SROs, and the fact that we've been told that there is potentially going to be a set time limit for considering things during omnibus, and if there are amendments that haven't been considered when we hit those deadlines, we just won't consider them at all. And that's why I and many other people were concerned, and I thought that one of the best ideas that are within our power would be to take a session to actually talk about the SROs individually. I didn't put any provisions in here to say that the deadline would be shut off, and that would be left up to the committee. So apologize for that, all of that. But I would like to move to table this for 1 week.
So there's been a motion to table the bill, or the second question, for 1 week. Are there any seconds on this motion?
Second.
Are there any objections to this motion? Seeing none, so tabled. Parliamentarian, I just want to triple check we did this correctly.
To my understanding, this is fine.
Okay. So I'll move this to tabled.
Information.
Yes.
When you get a chance. I don't know if this is the right point, but actually, just hit me up about how to divide this question into two bills. It's a point of personal privilege, because I think it's now a mess. That's all.
There's common sense understanding of what the two questions are, and we can work on that.
Yeah.
I will make a copy of the document. I'll make the changes as I understand them, and I will present them to the legislature as soon as I have done that. Does that work for the Northville representative.
I have a point of information. Does the president need to sign this change, the divided question?
It's a good question. I'll ask the parliamentarian that question.
I'm sorry, the question is whether or not the president needs to approve said changes?
Right. Did we just kind of approve a bill that now has to go to the president for her approval?
It's my understanding of the amendment procedure outlined at the very end of the bylaws. That's I don't know, page 59 or so. But it's literally the very end of the bylaws. It sets out that the legislature may, by its own will, with a 2/3 vote, amend the subsidiary governing documents, one of them being the standing rules of order. And it's, to the best of my understanding, that doesn't require presidential approval, but I will certainly check on that, and I'm doing so now, because obviously it would be annoying to be wrong about that.
I would also add the timeline for the president to make a decision is 9 days. And in 9 days, we would be potentially considering the rest of this bill. So if the president holds off because of this confusion parliamentary-wise, for us to finish looking at the remainder of the bill, I think that would make it, that would be the simplest route to take, if that answers your question.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So may I provide additional points of clarification here?
Yeah, of course.
Thanks. So the amendment process for the bylaws is relatively well described, and it kind of assumes the mantle of an omnibus process. And so in that section 1 of Article 14, the bylaws are described as there's going to be a sponsored legislation by the speaker. That's the bill we all know and love and consider as omnibus, and then that bill would be considered by us. However, such language is not kind of set through in section 2 for the other documents. And all we are left with is guidance is that the following documents may be amended by a 2/3 majority vote of the legislature. And so given that this still is in a bill form, it's probably best practice for the president to hopefully approve this or consider it. But I'm not sure it's strictly necessary.
Point of parliamentary procedure.
Yes.
How can amendments be proposed in non-bill form?
Yeah, that's where I'm not sure. I don't know what that would look like.
So why don't, it sounds like this is a fun conversation to potentially have in CBL while we're figuring out these documents and how they work.
Yes, but I think default interpretation, which may be the path of least resistance, is to keep this in the bill form and to keep this considered by the president, just in keeping with our other operations. I don't think that we'll need to make a huge exception for this.
All right, thank you. So the tabled bill is there. We will now move into follow-up. Are there any follow-ups on bills that were passed in the last 4 legislative meetings?
I have a follow-up for a legislative issue. As per the SROs, we're also allowed to follow up on legislative issues, right?
I'll direct that to the parliamentarian.
I have them pulled up. It literally says members may provide follow-up on previous legislation or any other legislative issues.
I was muted, but I agree. Yes, you're good.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So I just want to take some time and space to address the letter that was recently circulating and the topic of discussion in the Ledge channel, as well as some of the student concerns from today and last week. Students for Justice in Palestine, SJP, has been continuously discussing what the COVID-19 pandemic, moving classes online, means for our movement and campaign with all of our allies, fellow student groups that we work with. I was not given the opportunity to review the letter, as I was one of the last legislators to be reached out to about this. It is extremely disrespectful that I or SJP was never contacted regarding this letter to provide meaningful and genuine input, especially considering that I have repeatedly made it known that I am involved in this organization. While I understand that time constraints due to religious holidays such as Passover required the letter to be completed over the weekend, I was one of the last legislators to be contacted about this when I should have been one of the first. The fact that I was reached out to at the last minute made me feel alienated and ignored. I would also like to ask that all representatives please be more mindful of your actions and words and how they might affect others and their mental health, including in private Slack channels. It just seems like bad faith to assume that SJP would not even take into consideration the student concerns at last Wednesday's GBM. It is unfair and unnecessary misrepresentation of the student groups involved to simply assume these things, and this letter has stoked a lot of unnecessary fear and division at a time when we need to support each other and show empathy, especially in such unprecedented times when we're all trying to figure out what this pandemic means and how it impacts us. Also, the notion that the number of students speaking at student concerns is an indication of the entire campus's sentiments is statistically illogical and ignores the systemic obstacles some students face. Further, as the divestment resolution was not even proposed yet, it makes no sense to take the number of students speaking as any indication of campus sentiments. SJP and our coalition just released a statement a few hours ago to announce our decision. And this letter makes me feel, and many others, feel as though we have lost the little agency we have in our own movement and in creating our own narrative. It took us some time to create this letter, obviously, because we had to work with our co-sponsors and allies, and we wanted to be intentional in our wording. I want to be clear that this decision is in no way in response to the disgraceful letter created by some representatives. I am deeply hurt that SJP was not allowed to make our announcement on our own terms. In such a challenging time, it is our duty as student leaders to honestly represent all students in good faith, despite any personal disagreements we might have. It is unacceptable to create a letter literally about a student group's campaign without even reaching out to them first. I'm utterly disappointed that the reps felt it appropriate to cite a student group's website multiple times, yet did not find it necessary to reach out to that student group to see how the COVID-19 pandemic might impact our actions. Not reaching out to SJP and Divest UMD, the coalition of 18 student groups behind this movement, is irresponsible leadership and irrational. Frankly, it is quite evident that this letter was drafted in bad faith in an effort to intimidate and pressure students in support of the Divest UMD movement. Students for Justice in Palestine has been one of the most demonized and targeted student groups on this campus. We have faced threats, harassment, intimidation, and blacklisting from right-wing organizations, YouTube personalities, random adults on the internet, and even students on this campus. This organization has helped me to learn who I am as a person, the type of legacy I want to leave on this earth, and how to hold my head high in the face of unimaginable circumstances. While some of you might know that I am involved in SJP, I do not often share why it's so important to me. As the daughter of a first-generation immigrant from Greece, and as someone who has felt and seen firsthand the refugee crisis unfold in the country I grew up visiting in the summers, I have become increasingly aware of how interconnected all of our destinies are as humans in my young adult life. Our silence about the imperialist US military interventions in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and countless other countries is what in part has led to what is deemed the refugee crisis in Greece. Now, in this time of crisis, more than ever, in this unprecedented time of the COVID-19 pandemic, we realize how truly interconnected all of our actions and destinies are as humanity. But for many people, life is a permanent crisis. It is our silence which enables these permanent crises and systems of oppression to thrive unchecked. This moment we are living in has made me realize what is deemed an emergency or crisis is an expression of power. People in Gaza have been living in inhumane and overcrowded, lockdown-like conditions for decades, facing severe restrictions on freedom of movement, as for example, fishermen who go too far off the Gazan coast are shot at by snipers for simply fishing. Even looking at the refugee crisis in Greece, we can see how what is deemed a crisis is an expression of power. It is only deemed a crisis because the migration flows have entered Europe, as Turkey has had the highest number of refugees per capita. The humanitarian crisis facing the Palestinians, which has been happening for decades, has been enabled by our own silence and complicity, through actions of our governments and corporations when we do not hold them accountable. Just as has been the humanitarian crisis facing Black Americans and Indigenous nations across this country, which are also being threatened by colonialism. Complicity in war crimes and crimes against humanity does not become less important during a pandemic. It becomes even more important because it makes people that much more vulnerable. We will not shy away from calling out our own university's complicity in human rights violations and war crimes, and we shall not be silent until this pandemic is over. We will not be silenced until Palestinians are free to live a life of dignity and freedom like we all deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other follow-ups?
Can I speak too?
Of course.
Yeah, so originally this announcement was going to be about at UMD, but given me following up the off-campus outlines strong message, I do want to repeat the sentence that she had. A lot of people here strive to campaign to support marginalized students, but remember, speaking and action are two different things, and that's something to remember. Anyway, on a different note, at UMD is officially live. Thank you so much. Again, if you know of any student group that is doing any activity, please either reach out to me or Jinwook or anybody else involved. We're trying to make sure that all student groups are represented in this and all student groups have the platform to show off what they're doing online because they're putting a lot of work. And that's very, very important to highlight. So thank you so much for passing at UMD, and I'm very thankful that you guys did.
Are there any other follow-ups? These are follow-ups. All right. Then we'll move into executive updates, if there are any. Madam President.
Yeah, I have quick stuff, but since it's 8 p.m., I'll just say, please just read my updates, and please just check my Slack message in general. It'll be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Academic affairs, if there's an update, or from student affairs. All right, make sure to read their updates. And then cabinet updates, if there are any, please go ahead.
I have one.
Of course.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to try to keep it as quick as possible. One thing really quick, less of a, like, I guess it's still like an update related thing. I just wanted to make a note to please be aware of like the language that you're using during general body meetings. So please just always try to be mindful of what you're saying and ensure that it's as trauma informed as possible. And if anybody has any questions about that or what that means, I'm happy to give you resources. And then Sexual Assault Awareness Month related things. Pride Works is coming up next Thursday. Please RSVP if you're going to be there, because that is how we're going to get you the information about how to get on the Zoom call. So that's at 5 p.m. next Thursday. Thank you to Jamie for all their hard work on that. It's open to everybody, so please feel free to come. Please take the pledge to recognize and stand up to sexual assault at the link. We're still posting the challenges every day of things you can do to spread the word to your followers. And also there is a webinar tomorrow about COVID-19 and social distancing and how that impacts survivors. And I guess just one last note is make sure you're like checking in on each other and checking in with yourself. Now is a really hard time for everybody, including survivors. So make sure you're taking care of yourself and those around you.
Thank you. Are there any other cabinet updates from any cabinet directors? All right. Is the liaison to the College Park City Council?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I just have one quick thing. The other day, we officially put out the application for the student liaison to the City Council. So I ask that you all please share that around. Last night, the city selected their selections committee. So that's due on the 24th at 5 p.m. And the following week, the interviews will be had with the representatives from the City Council, including the outgoing speaker and the SGA and the current president of SGA as well. The outgoing president of SGA as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments for the good of the council? Or wait, we have. Hey, Conde, do you have an update? I know you just joined us.
Her audio wasn't on when she joined.
Okay, is it on now? Conde, do you have an update?
Hi, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to say that we finally got Earth Day back on. It was super last minute, but it's back on. It's happening on the 22nd, which is next Wednesday. I sent the link on general, so if anyone wants to join or just share it, that would be great. I'm going to be hosting a panel with a couple of Maryland environmental leaders, and we're going to have opening remarks from Bill McKibben, who's a climate leader nationally and internationally. He's amazing. So if you could please share that around, that'd be great. I'm going to drop some better graphics, hopefully by tomorrow or Friday. But yeah, I just wanted to update you all on that.
All right, well, thank you, and thank you for calling in. All right, for comments of the good of the council, I guess I'll do my weekly, where is Ralph? So I know Alawi has technically Ralph, but where is Ralph physically?
Oh, I also sent you a video for Ralph time.
Who did you send the video to?
I sent it to you on Slack.
Oh, I haven't checked Slack. Can you send it to Polifront so that, or yeah, could you send it to Polifront so you could pull it up on his computer?
Got you.
Yep, that's what I do.
Where is
A lot more than that. We appreciate you.
Yeah, also that being said, while I have this opportunity, I really am sorry for being late in the beginning. The video jinxed me. When you see the video, you'll understand why. So yeah.
All right, and where's Ralph physically currently?
Oh,
I can answer that. I currently have Ralph right now.
All right. We just gotta keep tabs, just make sure we.
Yeah, Ralph is just hanging out with some superheroes right now, so she's all good. Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
Perfect. Wait, let me reshare with computer sound. I apologize.
Ralph wants to watch, so Ralph is here.
Understandable. Oh, wait. That's good.
All right, so with that, I'll call the 25th meeting of the 2019-2020 legislative session to order. The time is 6:21 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
What just happened?
Yes, Jamie. Woo!
Oh
my God. Wait, I was so confused. I was like, are we having another meeting? Like, what's going on?
Oh yeah, we're starting it up again.
It's truly represented what it means to be human. I've never seen anybody who was so good at being human, and that's the craziest thing about it. So, Jamie, you really deserve this.
Oh my God, thanks a lot. We appreciate it. Excited to have Ralph. She'll be in good hands. Well, I mean, she's with Melissa, but.
We got you, don't worry.
Oh, that's smart. I just turn it out like that. Oh, that's smart. Okay. Thank you.
So with that, I will take any motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Are there any seconds?
Seconds.
Any objections? Hearing none, so adjourned.
Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Stay safe.